y'all seen the t-shirt, Arlington, we're more than a cemetery? I want that shirt. Of course we're more than a cemetery. We're known for big, bold leadership. In the 1940s, on the brink of World War, we quickly built the world's largest office building, the Pentagon, and all the housing for the workers. In the 1950s, when the rest of Virginia dithered, we integrated our schools. And for transportation in the 70s, we bet the farm that if we undergrounded our metros, instead of running it cheaply through the center of I-66, it would pay off. And boy, did it. That's what we're known for, that bold leadership. Well, and then 2014 came along. Our community was mired in controversies. An overindulgent dog park, right? An over-the-top aquatic center, $1 million bus stop, and 2 streetcar lines that were later canceled. This spawned headlines. Home of the big bold bet, have you lost your mojo? Now, if it's any consolation, we are not alone. Austin and San Antonio also canceled their streetcar lines. States, New Jersey, Maryland, they pulled back. And in fact, the very way our country funds transportation infrastructure, the gas tax, is lurching towards insolvency. How is it? How did we get here that small is the new big? Well, let's look at this a little bit. It's no secret our political climate right now is more about cutting taxes than building things. That's no secret. Our confidence that governments can pull off complex infrastructure projects is kind of weak. You know, we look around and transit centers in Silver Spring or the delay of the Silver Line. These all kind of put us on shaky ground. But you know what? There's also demographic factors at play. Our most celebrated cohorts, the baby boomers and the millennials, are both small bet kind of people. Baby boomers, also known as consistent voters, are entering their retirement years and really naturally cautious about spending. Millennials are very interesting. So yes, they are saddled with college debt like no generation ever before. And yes, they face really high housing costs in hot job markets like ours. But they also grew up with technology. Technology that lets little actions have big impact. Think of a tweet and that influence. And for transportation, millennials are asking, why should I spend tens of thousands of dollars on a car when, in fact, I can push a button and I can grab a cab. I can share a car. I can grab a bike. I can see when the next bus is coming. There is absolutely no reason to go big. But nowhere are the virtues of small being thought out more than in our business sector. 2 gentlemen from California, Stephen Blank and Eric Rees, both sat down and wondered why we take it as gospel that small businesses of all sorts, 90% of them fail in the first couple of years. Why do we accept failure? So they took a closer look and they noticed a pattern. An entrepreneur has an idea, gets a focus group, tests out this idea, and then they go build their product or their service or their software. They put a price tag on it, and they ship it out to market. But the big problem with this is the customer doesn't get their first look, their first touch, their first feel, until that thing is fully formed. There's no way to intervene sooner and say, you know what, that code doesn't work, or that handle's in the wrong place. So these 2 gentlemen, they wondered what would happen if we took the customer from the very back end of the process and moved them to the very beginning. They call it lean. And the idea here is that you start with a small subset of your idea, a mock-up or a prototype, and you put it in the hands of potential users, and you watch how they use it. And you fix the bugs, and you put it in another group's hands, and you watch how they use it, and you build it a little bigger, and you go on and on. Now, the secret here is not that you're working with small, but that you're building towards a more perfect big. They call it lean. And the thing is, every startup out there is asked from the get-go tell me how your idea is going to change the world. What big, wicked problems are you going to solve? What is your big, hairy, audacious goal? So what can we learn from this here in Arlington as we ponder transportation? How can we build towards a more perfect big? How can the place that mastered the big, bold bet work and prosper and even lead in this strategic small bet world? So we're going to look at 3 things here and what our opportunities are. I think the first really good question to ask is for transportation. What is our big, hairy, audacious goal? So this is a map, and this is a map of all of our existing and our planned rail infrastructure. This is the picture that sold our streetcars, Columbia Pike and Crystal City. When I showed this to skeptics, they all of a sudden saw that these things that we were creating here, our streetcar lines, were part of connecting the entire region, and people loved that. They loved that. But more important, this map is the future of work. Now, right now, when we think about workers and transportations, we think of a worker who leaves home, point A, goes to the office, point B, and at 5:30 does the opposite, A, B. But the world of work doesn't work like this anymore. Not even for stodgy big companies or even government. Managers are telling their staffs, get out of the office, get out of the building, go talk to customers and taxpayers, go network. So in any given day, the world of work now might run through half of the alphabet, not just 2 letters. And the places that create those nodes where you get stuff done, and the quickest, most reliable, most affordable ways of getting between them wins the economy. That's a pretty good goal, isn't it? All right, so we've got our big goal. Next, what are our really good strategic bets? First, I want to start off with the bicycle, the lowly bicycle, the 2 wheels, the 1 crank. But here, we're going to talk about its power. And we need to pat ourselves on the back, because here in Arlington, we did a fantastic job with our first generation of bike infrastructure, bike share, showers in buildings so bicyclists can bike to work. But our second generation, we need to start actually solving for some of our big, wicked problems. And there's none more wicked right now than affordability. This is a chart of my weekly commute from Clarendon down to McPherson Square. And the one thing that really stands out is, yes, how insanely expensive driving and parking is. But you know what else is? Metro. For far too many families, Metro is too expensive to carry out trips. We, as a region, need to start to take bicycles seriously as an economic engine. Because you know what? Every dollar that a biker saves on a trip is money that can be reallocated to housing, or childcare, or a class, or craft beer. I am from Clarendon. I throw that in there. Pub crawl. So what if Arlington actually took this on deliberately? And what if we took seriously the thought of bike trail-oriented development? Just as we were leaders in transit-oriented development around metro stations, what if we started doing that for bicycle? That would be real leadership. That's a real opportunity. The second is technology. So just like the millennials who are calling up an Uber, but not the Uber or the Lyft that act like taxis, but the Uber pool or the Lyft line or the Split or the Van Share Bridge that act more like mini transit systems that are on their way. That's where we really need to pay attention. And last month, Uber announced something really interesting, what they call smart routes. And what they're doing is they're asking multiple riders going in roughly the same direction to meet at a central point so that the driver only has to stop once. Saves time, saves money. But more importantly, you can see that it begins to create these nodes that we were talking about. And even more exciting for Arlington, places like Lee Highway, Columbia Pike, that are now distant from Metro, have a chance to offer residents really high quality transit. But not where you go to the transit station, where the transit comes to you. But this too needs some leadership and some hard thinking. Left to its own devices, excuse me, as these companies proliferate and grow, we risk chaos on the curbside as everybody's jostling to pick up and drop off passengers in addition to our own public systems. So what if we had the chance to actually do another kind of transit-oriented development that's devoted to flexible transportation, where we figure out how to arrange those buildings, that infrastructure, the streetscape, and all the rest of the stuff to accommodate the bike share, the car share, the Bolt bus even. All of these things that will let us live without a car, or at least not have to use it as often. This could be real leadership, and it's urgent because these companies are growing like crazy. But the most audacious technology coming down the pike is driverless or autonomous, and it's coming. Now, right now, the entire conversation about driverless is centered on cars, and if that's all we get out of this conversation, we lose. Because yes, you can fit more cars on the road because they travel closer without the risk of bumping together. But at the end of the day, all of those individual cars need individual parking. And you absolutely lose that placemaking dividend, that economic power of developing around transit, where you can pay more attention to people and places and less on parking. That is why we need to be on the forefront of new conversations that say, if you're going to use the public rights-of-way for driverless, transit comes first. Transit first. And we can be real leaders in that field. Now, if you're thinking that this is science fiction, let me inform you, this is already happening today. This is in Italy, where they have driverless transit. Now, I'm not suggesting that we adopt these little bugs here exactly for Columbia Pike or for Crystal City, but what I am saying is if it's coming and it's coming fast, the question is, are we going to be at the front of the line to get those resources and the research and the funding? Or are we going to be in the back of the line waiting? So 3 really big opportunities for us, 3 strategic bets. Bicycles, technology, driverless. So we talked about big picture, we talked about strategic bets, and the one thing I want to talk about now that we can really learn from as strategy is the Arlington Way. Now, if you're not familiar, the Arlington Way is our community's long-standing program that invites the public voice in to our major decisions on policy and planning. And by most accounts, it's broken. It's too critical, it's too micromanagerial, and in the hands of too few people. And some of those do ring true. But what if now we have the chance to actually improve the Arlington Way by going small and strategic? What has to change? Well, first of all, we need to get more experimental. And this is a fun picture from Santa Monica, California, where they had raging debates over how to slow down traffic on a major arterial. So you know what Santa Monica did? They threw a party. And they invited everybody out, and they said, bring your car, bring your bike, bring your stroller, bring your legs, and come test out these traffic calming measures, which they had mocked up using inexpensive landscape supplies during their party. And by the end of the day, the thing everyone thought they wanted most, to shut off the street, was their least favorite once they got to try it out. And the thing they thought they hated the most, the roundabout, proved to be the most effective, just in one day. So imagine if we had done something like this with our $1 million bus stop, where we had spec'd it out with plexiglass and plywood and PVC pipe. Then a lot of those arguments where people were having to picture in their head whether there was too much sheltering to invite people to spend the night or not enough to protect riders from the rain, it could have been right there. And what if we could have convened all those different agencies, those bureaucracies in one place at one time and said, do your design and your decision scrum right here. Maybe we could have cut off some of that time and some of that money. We could have seen it right there. We need to get more experimental. But if we're going to get more experimental, we have to rethink how we ourselves enter the Arlington Way as people. One way to look at innovation is a series of successive improvements. But the flip side is also true. It's a series of successive failures, because you're always trying to get it right, right? But we live in an environment now, like where we said, it's too micromanagerial, too critical, and we have to be able to understand that we're not going to get it right all the time. We need to be willing to have something that's not perfect, but our Arlington Way is talking about how to make it better. But if we're really going to improve the Arlington Way, we have got to take it to the streets. The way we do the Arlington Way now with workshops and board meetings is you come to us. But you know what? We've got to take the Arlington Way to the people. So this may look kind of strange, but in frustration last year, I took a bunch of Post-it notes and put them on the back of a bus shelter in Clarendon with a simple question. Arlington could be even greater if we ... And so I left it there, and I came back in an hour, and you know what I found? Nothing. Failed experiment. But I came back 3 hours later, and guess what? There were people crowded around laughing and taking pictures and writing, and by the end of the day, they were almost all filled out. Yes, 3 of them were pornographic. Yes, 4 of them were self-promotional. And oddly, 2 of them were anti-Post-it note Post-it notes. But the rest were an amazing snapshot of what people cared about in Arlington at this point in time, from affordability to mom and pop stores to even intergenerational tensions. And my favorite, Arlington would be greater if Helen stayed in Clarendon forever. You see what this experiment did? Is it took a lot of passersby who, in all probability, were not part of that small group active in the Arlington Way. And it took them from outside the process, or maybe at the end of the process, and it took them to the very beginning. Because people are only going to care about the Arlington Way if you show you care about them from the get-go. And all of these people took a small bet that somebody would eventually read their Post-it note. And guess what? Now they're in a TED Talk. The end of a TED Talk. But the beginning of a very urgent, very compelling conversation on what we're going to do to go forward. And transportation is the perfect convener because it connects all the things that we care about. Jobs, housing, childcare, beer, all those things get connected, and we can talk about the big picture, the strategic steps, and the people. Oh my God, you know what I just described? The Arlington Way. What Arlington is famous for, what we're known for, and what we do better than anyone else. The vision, the pragmatic steps, and the public engagement. And right now, we are in a very uncertain but very exciting time, especially when it comes to transportation. And we can be that leader again because people look to us to lead those kinds of conversations. So if you're interested, connect with me, and let's get this conversation moving. Thank you.